Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad.
Welcome back, everybody, to That Effin' Sports Show. We are running down every team in the NFL. We started in the NFC South. We're predicting records. We're going to try and figure out who's going to be there at the end to make it all a little bit easier and honestly probably a lot more accurate. We brought in Adam Hulse of Adam Hulse Sports. Adam, how you doing? We got Tampa Bay on the slate today.
Baker Mania, let's do it.
Yeah, Baker Mania, if you will. I got to try and lay off the sweets. I'm not into the Baker this year too much, as we're going to see running down the schedule. Minnesota is the first team on the slate. Tampa goes into Minnesota. I like Minnesota to win their first home game. I don't think Tampa's going to have it figured out yet. I got Minnesota winning.
Yeah, that's a tough road game to start your year against a team that was pretty good last year. Definitely going with the Vikings in that one.
Chicago comes into Tampa for game 2. Chicago, I think they're going to be so much better this year. Tampa, 15th best run defense last year, 10th best pass defense. Obviously, Chicago's strength is going to be in the rush. I think Tampa's defense kind of starts to keep gelling a little bit. They're going to be the ones to carry Tampa this year. How do you feel about this one with Chicago coming in?
Yeah, I mean, Tampa's going to have to rely on their defense because I just don't think Baker is going to be scoring a whole lot of points in that offense. I think they're going to be more of a smash mouth style team, right? They're going to try to run the ball, play defense. They're going to try to force some turnovers. And with the Bears coming to Tampa in this one, I think they can win it ugly. I think they can contain that rushing game a little bit at home. I'm taking the Bucs.
I actually have the same thing down. Philly comes into town next. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time here. I got Philly with the win.
Yeah, I mean, Philly's just so much better top to bottom. Give me Philly.
Nobody's fault. You're just not that good. Then they go to New Orleans. Again, without spoiling anything, I think New Orleans is going to be because of the division that they're in. I think New Orleans is going to be playing for something this year. I think they're going to have their eye on the prize. Not saying they're going to get there or anything yet. I think that they are just going to be better than Tampa Bay in this one in New Orleans.
I mean, these are probably the two teams who are going to be competing for this division title. The game being in New Orleans, tough road game for anybody. I'll take the Saints in round 1.
Early bye week for Tampa. I'm not sure if that's going to help or hurt or if it's even going to matter. Then they travel to Detroit. We've said it in the previous shows. Detroit, one of those that everybody's watching. People will be watching in this one, but I think what they're going to watch is Detroit beat Tampa.
This is a tricky one for me because I do think that Detroit's going to be a lot better this year. I think that Tampa is going to be a little more competitive than some people are giving them credit for, and I'm actually going to go for the upset here, and I'm going to take the Bucs.
The upsets are going to happen, and those are the ones that kind of ruin these things because you can look at it on paper and be like, oh, yeah, that's easy. Like the Philly game. That one's done before it started, and then things happen. So upsets are not.
Well, there's the look ahead spots too, right? Because sometimes Philly has that kind of same mindset, like, all right, we can sleepwalk through this one and we'll get a win. And Tampa Bay shows up motivating. Sometimes things are weird.
You never know.
Happens every year. There's big upsets every year.
We both got Tampa beating Atlanta in week 7. Then they travel up to Buffalo. It's not too cold in Buffalo at this point, but Buffalo's just a better team. Buffalo takes the win against Tampa at home.
Yeah, Buffalo pretty much better across the board. A lot of people seem to be a little more down on Buffalo this year than the last couple of years. I don't really understand why. I'm still just as high as on Buffalo as ever, so definitely give me the win here for the Bills.
We're going to get into that when we hit the AFC, but I'm going to talk your point just for a second. For me, it's not that I'm not as high on Buffalo. It's that I've got some other teams rising up to at least meet the same level, but we'll get into that. Tampa then goes from Buffalo. They travel down to Houston. I think Houston actually gets a win. If you guys have listened to previous shows on this one, I see a lot of rebuilding. I see a lot of problems for Houston this year. I think that going to be one of the worst teams. I guess in kind of an upset, I'm giving Houston the win against Tampa.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long, tough year for Houston. I do like some of the moves that they made for the future. I just don't think this is the year. I'll take the Bucs in that one.
Then Tennessee comes. They finally get to go home after traveling to Buffalo, and then they travel to Houston. Then they get to go home and face Tennessee. Tennessee, one of these teams that everybody's trying to figure out who's going to be playing quarterback, how's the defense going to be. I actually have Tampa Bay winning because it's at home. I gave Tampa the win at home. It was hard to look at this one.
I agree. I like Tampa getting the win at home. No matter which one of the three quarterbacks are playing, I'll still give the edge to the Bucs.
The Bucs kind of get a raw deal. they have to travel for 4 out of 5 games in this stint. So they went to Buffalo, they went to Houston, then they came back for a home game. Now they've got to go all the way across the country to San Francisco, who I think is a better team. So I give them the loss. And then they go up to Indianapolis after that. I mean, they're literally bouncing all over the place. I know they run these stats, and we're going to have to look this up. Tampa's got to be one of the most traveled teams on this schedule. But again, I give Tampa the loss in San Francisco. How are you feeling about that one? And then tell me about Indianapolis.
I mean, San Fran is just better at pretty much everything. And like you mentioned, this is a brutal kind of road trip portion of the schedule. So those two things combined, it's probably 49ers big in that game.
Yeah. And then tell me about at Indy.
This is a tough one because I think both of these two teams are kind of on a level playing field. So I'm going to give the edge to Indy just because they're at home. Had the game been in Tampa, I probably would have picked it the other way.
I actually have Indy winning at home as well. It's just something about playing at home that gives a team an edge normally. And then after, like we said, this brutal road trip.
Especially teams that you're not super familiar with, right? Like divisional games and teams you play often are one thing, but like those cross-conference type of games, I often favor the home team because I think the home is an advantage there because it's a team that you really don't play that often. So the familiarity is not so much there.
I definitely am with you on that. They get to play Carolina at home. You gave them the win. I gave them the loss in the previous show. And then they continue the road trip. Again, they've got to be one of the most traveled teams on the schedule this year. Traveling to Buffalo, Houston, home game. Traveling to San Francisco, Indy, home game. Then they travel to Atlanta, which we both gave them the loss in Atlanta. Then they travel to Green Bay. Their frequent flyer miles is going to be through the roof. And after all this traveling, after the loss in Atlanta, they go up to Green Bay. It's going to be cold. The wind's going to be blowing. But will the Green Bay Packers have it figured out? Will they be good enough to take Tampa down?
I'm not particularly high on the Packers this year. And this is another one of those kind of games similar to what I said about Indy in that I'll take the Packers because they're at home. Had this game been in Tampa, I probably would have went the other way. But give me the Packers at Lambeau.
It's hard to root against the Packers at Lambeau, but I actually did it. And I gave Tampa the win in this one in Green Bay. I think Baker knows how to play in the cold after his days in Cleveland. I think the team's kind of coming together at this point of the season, and they're doing what they can do. Maybe they're trying to make a wild card spot. So I'm going to give Tampa the win. Interesting,
yeah.
Take on that. Then they finally get to play some home games, but they got to play Jacksonville first. And I think we've all agreed that Jacksonville's going to beat every team in this division, I think.
Yeah, they probably will. You know how high I am on Jacksonville, how much I love Trevor Lawrence. Definitely taking the Jags.
Then New Orleans comes in. Again, we've mentioned it. Playoffs are in people's sight. I've got New Orleans beating Tampa at home in week 17.
Yeah, I do as well. I think this is one of those home split type of situations.
There you go. For the last game of the season, they go to Carolina. I gave them the loss. You gave them the win. And that's going to wrap it up. 7-10. Did say that you kind of had Tampa playing for a division title at this point, and you are consistent. You've got Atlanta at 5-12, Carolina at 6-11, Tampa sitting at top at 7-10. Still feeling good about where you're at for the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about where I'm at. This is the type of division that kind of like last year, 7 or 8 wins might be enough.
That's kind of why we started here, because you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, it might be. Join us as we take this journey through the NFL. Every team will go through the schedule. We'll let you know where they're going to finish, who's going to be there, who won't. Tampa might be by default. We're going to find out in the next show as we round out the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints. Join us here at That Effin' Show. You can find us at That Effin' Show, EFIN Show on Twitter. And you can always find Adam over there at Adam Hulse Sports on Twitter, NFL writer for Sportskeeda. Adam, thanks for joining us. We'll see everybody next time for the Saints.
Can't stop me now.
You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and show you things that you couldn't.